Well, the vote took place on Monday. It was described as peaceful and calm. Zimbabweans brimming with optimism for the country's future and emergence from the post-Mugabe era headed to the ballot box. Well, just over a day later, and the all-too-familiar and disturbing scenes have been unfolding on the streets of the capital, and all for the world to witness. The incumbent, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has called for peace as 3 people are killed during protests. Whilst many electoral observer groups, including SADC, have described a peaceful and orderly ballot, largely in line with the law, the EU and American observers have gone one step further. They've criticised the elections for being held on an unlevel playing field, describing soft intimidation tactics, and they've both called for the expeditious release of the presidential results. MD supporters, meanwhile, have taken to the streets, chanting, "We want our vote." So let's cross live to Harare to my colleague Sophie Ikenya with the latest. And Sophie, we've just been hearing from the MDC. Just take us through what they're saying.
A very good evening, Lukwesa from Harare. A calm evening here on the streets of Harare after a very stormy afternoon, if you'd like to say that. We have just heard from the opposition leader, the MDC Alliance leader, Nelson Chamisa, who says he's shocked and regrets the afternoon's events. In the past few hours, we've been hearing from various leaders. A few minutes ago, the president went on national television, and the police spokesman also went on national television, and we've also heard from the U.S. Embassy here in Harare. The president has categorically said that they hold the opposition, these are his words, they hold the opposition responsible for the acts of riots in the city. The police spokesman on her part this afternoon, about a few hours ago, said she has asked two opposition figures, she says, to report to the police to assist them with investigations. And the U.S. Embassy in Harare, in a statement, also said that they are asking the defense forces in Zimbabwe to use restraint in dispersing protesters. But we can confirm now that at least 3 protesters have been killed in the afternoon riots here on the streets of Harare. Well, my colleague Fergal Kane has been looking at how the day went.
From early, there was something different in the air. Reports emerged on state media that a presidential winner would be declared by the afternoon. And at opposition headquarters, supporters were gathering in anticipation.
It's about an hour to go before the declaration of the result. We've got police water cannon now stationed right outside opposition headquarters. And compared to the celebratory mood yesterday, it really does feel more tense here.
In the absence of an official result, the crowds believed the claims of their leader, however premature.
They want to hold us at hostage. We are not going to tolerate that because we know that Chamisa is the winner. Chamisa has got victory in his hands, and we are not going to listen to whichever results they are announcing.
But over at the results centre, hopes of an announcement faded as the declaration of parliamentary results dragged on. And it appeared that not all the legal representatives of the 23 presidential candidates had turned up.
For now, this is all we have for you. We will start announcing the results for the presidential as soon as that legal process has been taken care of.
The delay convinces the opposition that there's a fix. And as the day wore on, foreign observers appealed for a swift declaration.
The results of the presidential elected were counted first in the polling stations. And therefore, I have still to learn why it will be published last.
But just outside, the riot police had locked the gates against hundreds of protesting opposition supporters. They burned posters of the president and ruling party. We heard shots and tear gas. And then the afternoon descended into chaos. At the other end of the city, police came under attack. A ruling party office was targeted. Gunfire echoed around the city. There was injury and death.
There are soldiers just beyond this group of running people. It's changed dramatically, the atmosphere in the last 24 hours. Really volatile now. We've had tear gas fired, shots fired. I think we got to go.
We saw a bayonet-wielding soldier strike at a protester. Opposition supporters tried to blockade a large swathe of the city centre and witnessed scenes more reminiscent of a war zone than a country in the middle of a democratic election. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Harare.
Well, of course, that was the situation here in Harare this afternoon. And I should say the police spokesperson has also confirmed now that the armed forces, the military, will now assist the police in maintaining law and order in the city. But in other parts of the country, in Zimbabwe, the situation is calm, as far as we know. In places like Bulawayo, which are the opposition stronghold, they have supporters from the opposition. All is said to be calm. In Harare, there was a man who ran on a ZANU-PF party ticket. Don't forget, this is an opposition stronghold. And today, we went out to find out how his reception was in his homeland. The excitement is obviously palatable here in one constituency in south of Harare. This is the only constituency that a ZANU-PF parliamentary candidate has won. Harare is generally an opposition stronghold, and he stands out, but he does not stand out alone. Look at him with his supporters celebrating his victory and also celebrating the performance of ZANU-PF party across the country.
It wasn't as tough as I expected it to be, but you know, with all this support, no one would stand in my way.
All right, so can you do a chant? What was the chant for your supporters here? What were you saying when you were campaigning?
Okay, when I was campaigning, I would say, Pamberre ZANU-PF, Pamberre Batana, Tonga Ife, Tonga Ife, Itife, Itife, Pasne Mandu.
What was the biggest promise you made them that you will fulfill?
I promise I'm going to get them title deeds. Every single household, I'll make sure they're going to have their own paperwork so that they own their house and their stand.
All right, thank you very much. That's one man who won his parliamentary seat on a ZANU-PF ticket here in Harare, the southern part of Harare. Let's now bring in political analyst Alexander Rusero. He will be speaking to us about today's events. Thank you for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Are you surprised by this afternoon's events, the riots on the streets of Harare?
Yeah, the skirmishes, the events, they are not surprising, but they are regrettable. If you look at the tension that was building up, the inflammatory language statements that were being posted on social media by the leaders of the opposition movement, you would really tell that these things were bound to happen just the way they did.
Mr. Chamisa has just spoken out. He says he regrets what has happened, but he also earlier had said he did not order any of the protesters to go to the streets. Could they have been acting on their own?
Yeah, obviously the protesters, we cannot necessarily say they have been ordered, but if you look at the statements now that were being posted on the media, that the people should defend their vote, etc., even before proclamation of the much-awaited presidential results. One way or the other, they might be interpreted as just the way things have unfolded. So it's one thing for Mr. Nelson Chamisa to say he did not order the people to go in the streets and behave violently, but it's another to try to correlate the denial and the statements that were being posted on Facebook, the statements that were being posted on Twitter. Just like Evai said, the tension was building up and it was really going to happen the way it did.
All right, so we now have the military on the streets. Of course, they are under the command of the police. The president has come out to say he blames the opposition for what happened. What does that do to the political landscape right now and the psychology of Zimbabwe at the moment?
Surely the deployment of the military was not the wisest of the idea, but you'd also question the idea of an opposition storming the headquarters of a ruling party or of another political party and throwing stones. And it is a fact that most of the police officers are deployed in the police stations. So the police, in terms of the police detail to contain any form of demonstration, they were limited, they were few, and it left them desperate and to call the military to come in and assist. But military deployment now in this situation, it becomes a democratic spoiler. It has spoiled a process that would have otherwise come out smooth. But you also have to understand they didn't have a choice.
Very quickly, should the Electoral Commission have announced the results earlier? Because there are people who think that has stoked tensions a bit.
Elections have winners and learners. We cannot necessarily delay the announcement of elections because some of the people are going to be disappointed. Elections have to be announced. People have to accept the result as it comes out because it is an expression, one or the other, of the will of the electorate, the people.
All right, Alexander Rusero, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on Focus on Africa. So there you have it from that political analyst. We still do not have the presidential results, the names of the person who will be Zimbabwe's president. We're hoping that this will be done tomorrow. Of course, today, you know what happened. Of the 23 candidates, their representatives, at least half of them did not appear to verify the results. But we are, of course, here as your eyes and ears on the ground. When the results are out, we'll bring them to you. Back to you, Lukwesa.
Yeah, we look forward to that. Sophie Kenya there in Harare, thank you very much. So just to update you, we've had confirmation in Zimbabwe that the military will be assisting the police on a day when 3 people have died. And an MDC spokesperson speaking earlier said that the violence that was meted out by the military was disproportionate and unjustified. That coming from a spokesperson.